Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Cohasset Select Board meeting of Tuesday, April 28th, 2025. It's 4:32 p.m. We are meeting live at 91 Sawyer Street, Wolcott Commons. You can join us virtually by checking the Zoom link on the back of the agenda. We are on Facebook live streaming, and also, I believe we're being broadcast on Cohasset 143 local cable television. This meeting is also being recorded. So can I have a roll call, please?
Paul Grady present.
David Frog present.
Chris Plex present.
Ellen Mar present. And since we have a member that is on Zoom meeting virtually, every vote we take will have to be a roll call vote. All right. I'd like to invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment? If you don't mind just pulling up perhaps a little closer. Name and address for the record, please.
Jennifer Chu, 25 Virginia Lane.
Thank you.
Is this on?
Yep, the red light indicates it's on.
Perfect. So I am just coming here today to obviously understand who the other candidates are in more detail beyond their resumes, but also to share with all of you that this process seems extremely rushed. And I think that as a result of that, no matter who is chosen, this will ultimately be a disservice to the person coming into the role.
Okay. Any other, Kevin, is there anyone online? No? I'm sorry?
Nobody has their hands up.
Okay, thank you. So before we get to the actual interviews, we're going to quickly go through the motions for town meeting. This is a first pass. These will go back to council and we will look at them finally on Friday. Go ahead.
So, Article 1, recognize citizens and employees for particular services to the town. That is an annual article. Same as Article 2, the adoption of the annual town report. Article 3 would be reports of committees. We haven't heard of any that would like to report out, but if they so choose, they can on town meeting floor. Article 4 is the operating budget. Our accountant hasn't had the opportunity to work with council on these numbers. They have to be specific based on the recap for the end of the year. So she wants to make sure everything is outlined here and it's legally true to the motion.
Okay.
So we're going to hold on that one.
Okay. Would you just ask council to put in parentheses, whether it's a majority vote or a 2/3 vote or whatever the voting requirement is? Thank you.
Article 5, the unpaid bills from previous years. As we went through this in the warrant, we have 5 unpaid bills. We're asking to move $5,106.96 for unpaid bills. Article 6 is supplemental appropriations.
Excuse me, could you
Yes.
just repeat it? It's just $5,106. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure it's clear.
Article 6 is supplemental appropriations, again, consistent with what's in the warrant packet for a majority vote on town meeting floor.
And the PEG access transfer, that's every year we do it.
Every year we do that.
Yeah.
We do it once at special town meeting and we do it once at annual town meeting. Then we move along to Article 7, stabilization and other special funds. Again, a majority vote on town meeting floor. The annual transfers you see here from the OPEB Trust Fund, Capital Stabilization Fund. The Sewer Enterprise Fund is not an annual transfer. However, it is to transfer from the Debt Stabilization Fund to the Enterprise Fund for the purposes of membranes. And then we have the Roads and Sidewalk Stabilization Fund. And again, that's just a transfer out so we can spend that on roads and sidewalks the following year.
I have a question. And this came up before when I was looking at previous warrants and articles. It says raise and appropriate /free cash.
Mm-hmm.
So as I kind of, review where we spend our free cash, where we spend our our appropriations, it makes it challenging. Do we know at this point? Can we articulate?
Yep.
Or perhaps for the next town meeting?
We can. So it is here in the motion, $407,500 is appropriated from free cash for OPEB and Capital Stabilization Fund. We can break it out here in the article if you'd like to see the amount for each in free cash. We can certainly put that in parentheses under the transfer from funding source. So you're aware of what's coming from free cash and what's being appropriated through taxation.
I think that would just be clearer.
Clear? Sure.
Thank you. Okay.
The capital improvements budget article, there were some changes here. So I'd like to go through them. Everything you see in the warrant is accurate. We did add additional detail here on the general fund capital item for the borrowing for the replacement of engine 3 for the fire department. Originally, the amount we had in here was simply year 1 of the debt payment of $121,000 for a 10-year borrowing. We are required to put the entire amount here, which is $1.2 million. However, in the project description, we do outline this as year 1 of a 10-year borrowing with the actual amount. You'll see that there for the engine, and you'll also see it there for the sweeper for the DPW. So $360,000 is the full cost of the street sweeper. Year 1 payment is $36,000. You don't see that level of detail in the warrant, but it's here in the motions.
Okay. That's down 1.2. That's down. Wasn't the last projection 1.5?
I think the production we had from last year was 1.6.
Yeah.
And it came in the 1.2.
On the 10-year capital plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Article 9, allocation of funds of one-time costs, majority vote. Many of these are annual one-time costs. Something that is not an annual cost is FY 23, 24, 25 excise tax owed to the waterways fund from free cash. We're making that up in the amount of $24,000. The early retirement teacher amount is $84,000. That's also being funded through free cash. And new electrical code inspection, $63,000 from free cash. The cemetery maintenance fund is something you see annually. Article 10, revolving funds. Again, these are consistent year over year. The only change we have here in the revolving funds is for the building and the specialized inspections for the building department. We raised that appropriation to $100,000. And that is the only change that you'll see in the revolving account line item.
Is that due to volume or?
That is due to volume. It's also due to the way we're budgeting. We're actually using that revolving account.
Right.
To offset the budget. Article 11, again, perfunctory. This is something we vote on every year. Additional real estate exemptions. We do see an increase in Article 12. I believe the original went from 25,000 or 55,000 to 75,000. I don't have that in front of me right now. But we'll make sure that we have that written in the motion so people understand that there is a change in that article. Article 13. I'm sorry, Article 13 is where we have that change.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
I misspoke on that last night. Yeah.
Yep. So it's Article 13. We have the change. We'll make sure the motion reflects that. Article 14 is a rescission of authorized but unissued debt. Again, this is due to the water department. They were going to replace their GAC system. They decided not to. Therefore, we're taking that debt off our books. And we just need a vote of town meeting to rescind it. Article 15 is Cohasset water rate structure. Christopher Pratt will be here to discuss the water rate structure on behalf of the Water Commission. And we should probably make sure we'll have the vote next to it.
Yeah, actually, a couple of these.
Make sure.
Article 14, yeah, we need to vote too.
Article 16, this is for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. They're looking to borrow $1 million for the design of the wastewater treatment plant to include the HVAC and odor control systems. membrane blowers, electric equipment. Once again, this is for design, and it's being borrowed by the sewer commission.
For the existing location.
Yes, exactly. Article 17, the creation of a revolving fund. This is a new revolving fund for the cemetery. This was requested by the DPW director to take the cemetery fees and use them for cemetery maintenance. Article 18 is a community preservation committee. They're consistent with what's in the warrant. The one thing you won't see in here that you do see in the warrant is the borrowing under projects. The borrowing is now going to be accounted for up in the general fund operating budget, which is article number 4.
Oh.
So we're just making it clean. So when we do the recap at the end of the year, everything is clean.
So by the amounts of these two projects, we didn't have a normal CPC request year.
And it was very light this year.
It was very light, and it was actually good that it was light, because the last couple of years we've had some heavy
Some big ones.
requests, some pretty big requests. So this is a year to mostly bank the money and reset for going forward.
And David, you think that everyone who's eligible for CPC funding, they're aware of the process?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
one of the things the CPC committee is doing is trying to do more outreach to get to the community groups so they know that there's these opportunities, whether it be for historical recreation or housing or open space. But it's pretty well known.
Okay, thank you.
Article 19, again, is the amendment to the South Shore Regional VOTEC. And this is the addition of a new community, which is actually helpful to the communities that are already vested in it. It reduces our fees.
Should we put the community, or can we put the community in the motion, because people won't bring their warrant? And it's Pembroke, correct?
Pembroke. Not a problem. Article 20, an amendment to the Cohasset bylaw. This is a bylaw initiated by the town clerk regarding parking regulations. It's as printed in the warrant. There's no additional changes to that article. Article 21, the Cohasset Public Safety Building requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. We're looking for an appropriation of $21,783,000 for the design, renovation, construction, equipment, and furnishing of 135 King Street. There's been a lot of questions asked about Article 21 as to the ballot question. So I just want to remind everyone that the number listed here in the motions is the only place you'll see the number. It is not on the ballot. Town meeting authorizes this amount. We can spend up to this amount. You can't spend more than this amount. So a yes vote would get this amount authorized. And obviously you'd need a yes vote at the ballot to then move forward and borrow it.
So the 40-50 million that's been put out there is so,
Yeah.
you know, be clear about that. It doesn't exist.
So we're looking to borrow
And that's
21,783.
as far as we can go.
That's as high as we can go. I do want to add, though, we did get an authorization of $10.4 million in the past for this building. So if you're looking at this borrowing plus the other borrowing, the entire project cost that everyone has been asking for is about $32 million. When you look at the entire project cost, that includes the purchasing of the building, all the design work that's been done, and then this additional borrowing.
Thank you. Sure.
Article 22, again, is a resolution. This will be presented by the Alternative Energy Committee, Tanya Bodell. But once again, it's as printed in the warrant. Article 23, Stormwater Management Bylaw. It's a procedural change put forth by the Conservation Commission. It's as printed in the warrant. There's no additional information. And Article 24, we have Citizens Petition Noise Control Bylaw. This motion is somewhat different than what was printed in the warrant. The petitioner asked that we add that the line trimmers are banned between May 15th and September 15th. So the motion reflects their desire to have that added. In Article 25, Citizens Petition, we don't have a motion as of today to print in the warrant. So as in the motion, I'm sorry. So as far as this article, it's as printed in the warrant.
Okay, so back to Article 24. It's gas-powered leaf blowers and line trimmers bans.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And there was no further language from,
Receive any further language
okay,
for Article 25. If we do receive it within the next couple of days, of course, we can print it and make sure it's in the motions. We just need to make sure we get something.
and the petitioners are aware.
They've been working with legal counsel.
Okay, perfect.
I would encourage all citizens in the community to bring their warrant to town meeting. Since we do reference the warrant several times here, there will be a couple of copies there, but not enough to give everyone a second copy. So if you received it, when you receive it in the mail, please just bring it to town meeting. Well, questions? Any additional changes you would like to see of the things that we just referenced?
Anything additional?
Is it
Go ahead.
possible to add that total figure for public safety?
I don't know if it's something we can add to the motion. It's certainly something we can add to a presentation that will be afforded to the
I
community.
think that's valuable to let them town know this is what it's going to cost. You
Okay.
know, the total project, the ideal. We've had a lot of questions on that. Understandable. Good. Thank you.
Mr. Farag, any questions or comments?
No, straightforward.
Mr. Plex?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and so we'll do one more final walkthrough on Friday. Okay. And they'll be printed on Monday.
They'll be printed on Monday. We're walking through them with advisory tomorrow.
Yep.
And then they'll be printed.
So if they have any material changes, we'll be able to review those on Friday.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. We're almost at the finish line.
Almost.
Okay. Where's my agenda? Okay. So we just did that. Are we a little bit ahead of schedule? A little bit. I believe, are our representatives from MRI? You're here. Do you want to come up and, okay.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, sure.
This portion.
Okay, yeah. They're going to walk through the process and how we got to where we are, but
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah.
So just your name and introduction for the audience and that's viewing.
Want to go first? I'm Buzz Stepchinsky, and I've been with MRI for about 10 years or so. I'm Bob Mercier. I've been with MRI since I retired out of Burlington, Massachusetts, as the town administrator there. And Buzz was the Andover town manager over there. So
What's the difference between an administrator and a manager, just quickly?
generally in the powers that the manager has vis-a-vis a town administrator, generally.
Okay,
overall.
okay,
I operated under both. I had a town charter with a strong town manager in Billerica.
okay.
Buzz had a strong town manager charter in Andover.
Mhm.
I had a strong town administrator charter in Burlington. It was a special act of the legislation.
Okay,
What it did, though, it excluded some of the departments from the authority of the
Okay.
town administrator, mostly in the elected realm.
okay,
So,
okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
so thank you. Thank you all. Chris, thank you. We enjoyed the process here. We went through it. We told you when we interviewed with you, the process would take 12 to 16 weeks. We're in week 13, so we met that obligation thanks to a lot of folks, including Paul and Tim back there. And I know we have another member here from the screening committee. We'll talk to you a little bit about that and that process we followed. Was that you? Okay. So we began the process. I think we signed our contract February 3rd with you folks. And so we're about 13 weeks into the process. First order of business is to get the ad in. And we got the ad in. That runs 30 days. So that gave us into roughly the middle of March before we had responses from folks. We got what we thought, and in the interim, we're preparing our profile and challenge statement, which you have posted on your site. We posted on our site. And all of the candidates read that because it gives them a general overview of the community and what the problems may be. We call them challenges in a community. And you'll see from the interviews tonight that your candidates reviewed that document. They sort of know what they're talking about. They're not experts in everything, but they know what they're talking about. And their commitment to the town will, I think, be evident when you listen to the candidates you're going to have before you tonight. We got a lot of that input from you folks. We heard what you were asking for. A lot of things like leadership, collaborative approach to government, commitment to the community, financial acumen. So we heard all of that stuff, and we included that in all of, you read the profile, so in all of those things we were looking for in the candidates as we got them. Once we closed that out and we got the responses, how many? 28?
We received 28 responses, 18 of them from candidates in Massachusetts and others from New England and around the country.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we had some very highly qualified individuals from around the country, and we typically get that, people who are looking to relocate back to the Massachusetts or the New England area. Unfortunately, two of our highly qualified individuals withdrew. I think they took a look at housing prices and said, well, that's a shock. I can't really move back right now. So, but that's typical. We see that a lot when people want to try to relocate back to New England. It's somewhat of a sticker shock for a lot of folks, and they can't really do it. So once we got all of those folks, I know you guys appointed your screening committee, which we met with, but once we get through the 28, we narrow it down. We look at who meets the qualifications that you helped us establish. You know, do they have all of the type of skill sets that you're looking for? Maybe not all, but the majority of the skill sets you're looking for. And we narrow it down. And some are pretty dismissive. We dismiss them pretty quickly. They just don't have any qualifications for the position. But we were surprised. We had some highly qualified,
I would say,
individuals. Ultimately, we went before the screening committee with Tim back there and Paul on the committee, and we took them 7 candidates.
We had 7 candidates that they interviewed.
They wanted to interview all 7 of them
over 2 consecutive days.
And 2 consecutive days, a Friday and a Saturday, believe it or not. But kudos to the committee. They made the time, because they understood our timeline and what we needed to be within the 12 to 16 weeks. And they did that, and they made that commitment. And frankly, they went through 7 interviews, and I'm just echoing, and maybe Tim can comment on it, or Paul, but I think they had a pretty difficult decision to make to move. We originally talked about 3, and ultimately, I think the committee said, let's give them 4, because we think all 4 of these people can do the job. So we're at that stage now. You're at the final stages. Unfortunately, we heard this morning that one of our candidates has withdrawn, and that's the town manager over in Duxbury right now. So, but that's fine. You have 3 quality candidates in front of you. This happens. You know, people enter into a search like we conducted or somebody else conducted, and at times they make decisions based on family requirements or whatever it happens to be, or other reasons, and they withdraw. And you've seen it. You know what's going on around you in some communities around you. So you see that kind of stuff. Having said all that, we're very satisfied with the responses we got to the advertisement and the people that the committee brought forward.
And we instruct and we ask the screening committee to look for candidates that can do the job. And we when we talk about the fit, we ask you folks, the select board, to really think in terms of what's the best fit that you think will work for your town. Because the candidates that you're going to see, the 4 and now the 3, those people have the fit to be able to do what's required in this community based on what we know of it and your reputation, your finances, that sort of thing. It spoke very well to all the candidates. So, you know, they're bringing forth to you candidates that can all they can do the job, period. And now your job, we think, is to see which fit is best for you, because that's really who the town manager is going to work for, or it's going to work for the select board.
And we make it very clear for the committee and ourselves, obviously, and we don't get involved in ranking. And we tell the committee not to rank the candidates that are going before you. Just submit to the appointing authority qualified candidates. It's the appointing authority's job to pick the person they think is the best fit for your community. And they were very good about it. Having said all that, I think Buzz and I, we do a lot of these. We just want to thank you. We want to thank the committee, the members of the committee, because as you know, you're involved in the public arena. It is tough herding the sheep sometime and getting everybody to get their calendars coordinated when they can meet, the time constraints and all that kind of stuff. And they did yeoman work. They asked appropriate questions, some probing questions, and I'm sure you're going to have some questions tonight. And at the end of the day, they decided to move those 4 people forward. I'd be remiss, and Buzz would be remiss, if we didn't thank Meg and,
Yes.
of course, Aaron.
Thank you
for
very
helping
much.
the logistics, putting everything together, keeping us in line. We can get a little crazy sometimes, but it's important to have somebody there, the point of contact, and they were very good with us. So just needed you to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions?
Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
From us, yeah. And I think that call was from our first candidate, and the person was probably waiting in the parking lot.
I just wanted to vote, the town manager position here in Cohasset, of course, started in the mid 80s in 1986. And for a town that's been around since 1770, in the line of history, that's relatively new. And I like to think 1986 wasn't that long ago either. But we've had a number of town managers since then, and even the Town Manager Act has changed. So, and then the way you choose a town manager in recruiting them has changed, and the business of a town manager has changed through time, and it's evolved from not only here in Cohasset but in the Commonwealth. So, to have a firm help out is really one of the only ways to do it now. In when you're looking to choose and help your government modernize. So I thank you for it. And of course, the committee, the town manager, research committee, for all the work that they did, because I did watch all their meetings, and the questions that they asked, and the thoroughness that they went through it, and, tossing around some different ideas. I think it really helped to bring it to the final 3 or 4 originally that was for us. So with all that being said, again, thank you all. And because we don't do it that often here, it's been 12 years since we've had it, and to just dust it off and say, well, let's do it the same way you did 12 years ago. Well, everything has changed since then.
Right.
And hopefully, we'll be one of those towns that'll do it in decade cycles, and not some of the other towns where there seem to be flip-flopping them like baseball managers. So, yeah.
Well, the good news for
Correct.
you, David, is Cohasset, and we found this out because we did the recruiting, and we did some direct recruiting. And some people backed off because they didn't think they were the right fit based on what we created in the profile, which is fine. But this is a desirable place. And people were very interested in coming to Cohasset. So you're fortunate with that, because you have some stability. Believe me, there are some communities that you just talked about it, change managers every 2 years.
You only need to go 2 clicks down the road.
We know.
It's not stability. And that's one of the biggest things is getting stability. But it was a great, like I said, you did yeoman's work doing it. So thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Mr. Grady?
I'd like to thank you both. It was a pleasure to work with you. I'd like to thank Tim as a part of the person, and Suzanne for serving on the committee. And it was nice to hear you guys say that Cohasset is a desirable place to come due to our financial stability and the way the town's been run in the past, budgeting correctly, and the people we've had in place are good stewards. It's nice to hear. But again, it was a good committee to work with, and they need some very qualified and nice people. I'd like to thank Mr. Davis. He ran a heck of a show, and it worked out well so far. And now we're moving on to the next step.
Did you find him to be a tough chair?
I've always, a tough negotiator. He knows he.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
We're here, so we're not going.
So you're not going anywhere?
Yep.
So, just Mr. Davis, Suzanne, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. Thank you. Thank you very much to you and the whole committee for all the work you did. And I don't know, Mr. Davis, if you'd like to say a few words about the process, or it's up to you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you are here.
I'm happy to.
Because I know you're never short for words, so.
I try. Anyway, Tim Davis, 257 Atlantic Avenue in Cohasset. As I mentioned before, when we met before, it was a terrific committee. People took it very seriously. The one member who could not follow through was Bill Burnett, but I followed up with him before we started the process and after we started the process to make sure he felt as though his voice was still heard. And he was very pleased with the process and very disappointed that he was unable to be part of that. I think the thing that the committee really became aware of even more than we all are anyway living in this town is that the position of town manager is a very difficult position to have because it requires the ability to take direction from the select board, whether or not you agree with the direction it's going in, also to be able to collaborate and discuss with the select board if you have different information so that the select board can come to the appropriate decisions, and then to deal with the town. And as we know, in any town, as we go through, get more and more of the social media and people get irate about various things. You almost have to be a priest to be able to deal with what comes across your desk as a town manager. So we saw some very, very capable candidates, and we put forward 4. You now have 3, but I think at the end of the day, we'll end up with a very strong town manager.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Tim.
Suzanne, did you want to say something? Just your full name and address for the record.
Suzanne Kescometti Averill, 7 Cushing Road. I guess this was my first time foraying onto a government committee here in the town. I learned a lot. I have over 30 years HR experience in business and nonprofits, but I've never been exposed to kind of the intricacies that are municipalities. So I think, one of the things that was eye-opening for me is seeing all of the different regulations and guidelines and parameters that towns and cities are subject to. So that was eye-opening, even though I majored in public administration in college. And I think the other thing too is one of the things that I learned from all 7 candidates is every town and municipality is facing the same challenges that we are facing. They're, rising costs, whether it be salaries, benefits, infrastructure. Every community is facing those same problems. So I think that's something that is not unique to Cohasset, and we are facing a lot of issues, but the goal is to get there between the select board and the town manager. So that's my only thing that I would say is that going forward, we have to work together to figure out all these problems.
Right. Thank you. And if this piqued your interest in public service, the select board will be looking to appoint.
It doesn't.
I might try again later, Suzanne. We have 30 boards and committees.
Remember, Suzanne, I know you.
Yeah. Spots to fill. Okay, so are we, okay, excellent. I believe we are on.
Ready? Ready to start?
We're ready to start. Thank you. You have the resume?
Make it.
Okay. So, while we wait for the first candidate, just to refresh the board, we will be going, member by member, question by question. So an individual select board member won't ask all of their questions in a row. And, I believe that we'll have the opportunity for follow-up. Okay.
That's under your control.
Okay.
The members should go through you to ask the follow-up.
Okay. Thank you. So we're ready. Yep.
Well, folks, I would like to introduce Karen Preble. Karen is the Finance Director, Town Accountant in Carver. Karen, your seat's right up here.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Ellen. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And we have one member on Zoom, Karen. So Mr. Plex is on Zoom.
Oh, good evening.
So speak right into the microphone so that everyone can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to this interview and sharing my skills and quality with the town of Cohasset.
Great, thank you. Shall we dive right into questions? Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Farag.
With blue.
No, I know,
Okay.
I'm gonna go last. So the order is going to be Mr. Farag, Mr. Grady, Mr. Plex, and then myself.
I'll start off with my thank you. Nice to meet you. What has been the biggest failure in public service career, and what did you learn from it, and how did you change your approach?
I think my biggest failure within municipal government was when I worked for the city of Cambridge, and I was working in the budget department, and there was a project that I didn't review, and I didn't realize that we hadn't issued bonds on. And so when we came time to come to the end of the fiscal year, we didn't have the funds available. What I learned from that is that I need to be transparent. And if there are any issues that come up, they need to be presented immediately, and to make sure that I had a priority schedule. And that was in my earlier career working in municipal government.
Great.
Mr. Grady?
Again, nice to see you again, Mr. Paul. Tell us about a time you set expectations for department heads or other direct reports and held them accountable while also maintaining a collaborative and supportive work environment. What was your approach and what was the outcome?
Working for the city of Brockton, I had to set expectations for all the department heads. I was a budget director, and I had every department that reported to me. I met with each department and went over their budgets, but I also presented what I expected them to look for in terms of maintaining, not going over the budgets, but I also presented what they can expect from me as department head. And I do the same thing while working in the town of Carver. I support the departments that I work with and the managers, a collaborative manner, but I have their support in what they do. But they also need to be held responsible for maintaining their spending levels. But it's something that I monitor on a monthly basis. So if something is in the red, or if I see something that's coming up, then I meet with them to review it.
And again, what were the outcomes?
So the outcomes, I have an excellent rapport with all the department heads. I've never gone over budget within a line item. If there's any unforeseen expenses that may come up, I manage that with the department. I work with the finance committee, in towns to look at different transfers and see what is unforeseen. And I we've had wonderful results in terms of being able to balance a budget, meeting deadlines, and being able to just work in a cohesive environment between the two of us.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Plex?
Thank you, Ellen. And I apologize for my absence, but I hope to be there shortly. So I appreciate you taking my question. When addressing an operating budget shortfall, how do you prioritize identifying new revenue opportunities and implementing budget cuts while maintaining service levels? And can you provide an example?
Yes. So in the town of Carver, we just completed our FY27 budget, and there, as you're looking at revenues, we didn't have enough revenue to support the expenses. And so we had to, and I had to go through and look at areas within the budget that we could reduce in expenses. So I have, projected expense models so I can look at past trends and also look at revenue sources. Another thing that I do is, having my certification as a governmental accountant, I'm able to review the balance sheet. And as I was reviewing the balance sheet, I was able to look at other revenue resources that were available that could fund some of these shortfalls in the budget. And that comes from looking at revolving funds to projects that may have been bonded and they were completed, and not all the bond proceeds were spent, and so that money would then become available. And some of those things you wouldn't notice because they're not part of your regular operating budget, but they're part of your balance sheet. And those are things that I review as a town accountant in that position.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So my question is a little different. Besides the usual cliches, although they're all true, that Cohasset is a charming, affluent, educated, engaged, and informed community, what did you find most surprising, good or bad, when you researched Cohasset for this position?
One thing I realized about Cohasset, it is an affluent town, and I grew up in the South Shore, is that there are challenges. There's challenges in the school department with the fact that there was $1 million deficit. There's a level funding. It also, as I was researching, looking at the stormwater and the watershed treatment plant and making sure, how are you resilient to climate change and flooding? Those are things, as I was reading, I felt that it was very similar to my experience working in the city of Cambridge, because I was very involved with the sewer stormwater infrastructure projects. I managed all the state revolving fund programs. I worked with the MWRA and the MWPAT. And, another thing that I noticed about Cohasset was the public infrastructure that you're doing for the public safety building. This was of interest to me because I managed all of the capital investment projects for the city of Cambridge. So I managed an oversight from designer selection to CM at risk for the public safety facility, the renovations of the Cambridge Ridge High School. I worked with HKT, who is an architect for the City Hall Annex, while my time in the city manager's office. And I felt that really mirrored what's happening here in Cohasset. So although Cohasset, has wealth of resources such as Cambridge, is limited. Everything that we do is based off of the quality of life for the residents, but of course people don't want to see their taxes going up. And I've noticed that in towns like this, you have to be really strategic in looking at grant programs, additional funding. As I was thinking about Cohasset, and I was thinking about the public safety facility and looking at the debt exclusion, and kept thinking, what are other resources? And I know that within the Senate means and way, there's a bill for a capital building authority. It's similar to the Massachusetts the MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, and that would be providing different towns grant programs that will help alleviate the need to have a debt exclusion, the need to have, an override. So I think that, those are things that you have to think about, especially in towns like Cohasset, or what are different options? What are different resources that you can look into? What are different ways of working together? And, even with the school department, I look, having worked in so many communities and different forms of government, working with schools, working in towns where we had resources to towns where the resources were limited, you have to be really strategic in how you think. And I think from what I've seen in my experience is that working collaboratively with the school department, they can't be separate. You can't look at the town and the school separate. And sometimes you see that in a lot of communities as you're fighting for resources. But in Carver, and I'd say that I've had, excellent experience in Carver working with the school department in terms of figuring out a way that we can balance the budget, minimize the reductions, work collaboratively, on how we manage capital projects, but it's a team. It's a team effort, and it's not trying to pull and tug, with money for the two. And, as I look at Cohasset, I think about how can you bring things together. Maybe it's sharing of IT. Maybe it's looking at different services that can be combined as one to help minimize expenses. It could be looking at ways to be more energy efficient. In Cambridge, Cambridge has a wealth of resources, but we still move forward with looking at climate change, looking at ways of reducing energy. So, we have every building and school that we built was LEED certified, and LEED certified is just looking at ways of, providing energy efficiency within the town. We did solar panels, and everything was looking at to save the city money, even though there was a wealth of money. And I see the similarities between Cambridge and what I've done within my career in Cohasset.
It's funny, people wouldn't compare Cambridge to Cohasset, but I understand why you did. Okay, next round, Mr. Farag.
Thank you. The town manager role often extends beyond a typical 9 to 5 schedule due to meetings, community events, and emergencies, such as when we had the last snowstorm. How do you ensure you can meet those demands? And are there any current commitments that would limit your ability to fully meet the time and availability expectations of this role?
I don't have any, I don't think there's anything that ties me not to be available. I've waited my entire career for an opportunity where I could utilize the skills that I've learned in the past. This is not a position I would have pursued 3 or 4 years ago because I had a son who's graduating from high school. He's moving on to college. I really enjoy working in municipal government. I want to be a public face for the town. I think it's, getting out in the town, being visible, going to different departments, meeting with the residents, understanding what their needs are. I did a lot of community engagement working in the city of Cambridge under the city manager. The city manager, Bob Haley, and Deputy Rich Rossi, who I worked under for 13 years, I learned a lot about public and community engagement, working with residents, having community meetings. There was a lot of infrastructure that was going on. You have a lot of irate residents that want to enjoy the quality of life and may not want to see the structure of their community changing with high-rise buildings. And so those are things that I'm accustomed to. Those are things that I've learned from. And, one thing that I was thinking about when I was looking and researching Cohasset is that when I started the job with the city manager's office in Cambridge, my first project was working on leaf blowers. There was a couple of residents that complained that the quality of their life was being destroyed by leaf blowers and people going up and down the street blowing leaves on a Sunday. And my job was to research every manufacturer throughout the entire country and look at the decimal levels that we needed to have for leaf blowers so that it would minimize the noise for residents. And what we did is we put together a medallion program and the schedule for landscapers and for residents. Sometimes it's hard to police it because you do need to have an enforcement, but we had had policy set up, and I believe that with that medallion program, there were a lot of residents that were happy with the change. Was it a little bit of an inconvenience to have to rake leaves, then use the leaf blowers? Yes, but no, you can get exercise with raking leaves, and those are some of the things that we were thinking about, but it was something that it took a year to address. And it was a lot of public meetings, and that's something that I was part of. And those are things that really I saw here in Cohasset, because you had similar situations. And I feel that the knowledge I have and the experience that I've been through, it's something that I could bring to the town.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Grady.
Could you describe a time you led an organization or team through a significant change? How did you manage resistance and ensure successful implementation?
I'm thinking I have a few examples. I think for one of the changes was working for the city of Brockton. When I came to Brockton, this was in two capacities working for the city. I was a budget director, and at the time there was no budget document, and departments didn't really have a role in giving information to the city. And so what I did in that particular town is I created a GFOA certified budget and was able to meet with every department, put together a budget document that was transparent, that provided everything in terms of debt service, all of your projects. A lot of the departments didn't feel like that was their role. And they felt like this all should be done by the budget. But I sat with each department and I explained to them the importance of putting together this book, but it also highlights their accomplishments. And I think that, through that process and through being able to show the value that they provided to the city, it made them feel good. And I walked through and I put together a lot of steps. I think that anytime you're making any type of change that somebody is, not supporting, it needs to be clear. You need to set expectations and you need to be patient and be able to explain the importance of the why you're doing it and understand that it's going to take time for that to happen. And the other time that I felt like I had to make a huge change is when I was the city auditor for the city of Brockton, and that position had been vacant for more than a year, and they didn't have any policies around purchase orders. And so, I had to put together information on procurement under 30B, what can be procured, what needs to be signed by the mayor. And I had to put together a process of all of the departments using a new system, scanning invoices. And at the time, the administrative staff didn't want to scan invoices because it took too much time. They didn't want to put anything on a purchase order form because it took a longer period of time. It took training. I trained the staff. I sat down with the department heads and the admin staff to explain to them the importance and why we were doing it, because it was going to reduce the amount of time that it would take to pay a bill. So all of the departments were, concerned that bills were sitting for a month or, 3 to 4 weeks because we didn't have the staff in the department. But putting together a schedule where it was time stamped, they were no longer worried about, I thought I put it on your desk, but it's not here. So with the time stamp process, they felt like they also had a role in making the timeliness of the invoices being paid, because they knew that what they submitted was actually being documented. It took time to train the staff, but I think that was a huge accomplishment. But it was really getting buy-in and letting people understand why you're making the change and what it is, and sitting with them and giving them resources. I put together a resource book so that people understood what a purchase order was, what procurement was, what they could buy, what they couldn't buy, and explained everything in detail. And I did a video so that if we didn't have staff in the department to explain it, there was a video that they could review as a resource guide. So that's 2 examples. I could give more, but I don't think I want any more. But those are 2 examples where I had to make changes that were, got a lot of pushback. You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Fox.
But I think you already answered a lot of this question. So I'll ask it anyway. But how do you ensure clear, consistent, and transparent communication across staff, boards, and committees and the community? Can you provide a specific example?
Yes. I think the most important is setting policies and setting schedules. So working for the town of Carver, we have a select board, and with my 2 years working in that town, the select board wanted to have time, and the finance committee wanted to have time to be able to review budget. So what I did was I set up a schedule, and I made sure that I met those scheduled deadlines. I think because that builds trust and it holds me accountable for, what I'm providing to that particular department. And, in terms of boards and committees, I've had a lot of experience working with the Community Preservation Act committee. I oversaw that committee in Cambridge for the 13 years I was in the city manager's office. So I worked with the housing authority, I worked with the department heads. And so we had meetings and we went over all the different projects that they were interested in, going over what's eligible, what's not eligible, and just kind of meeting together and everyone being part of the collaborative effort of putting those different projects together. And just with committees, I think that even with auditing committees, finance committees, knowledge is power. The more that you understand and the more that you can comprehend, or I can explain financial data in a manner that's understandable, I think that you are able to, allow people to come together and work cohesively. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I too believe that you've already answered this question, but I'll ask it anyways. Because you referenced what every municipality is going through. How would you handle what's been dubbed by the MMA the perfect storm of aging infrastructure, cost exceeding revenue, and of the fiscal challenges facing all of us, in particular Cohasset, in terms of priorities and planning?
Yes, that's that's a challenge for all of us. I think the first thing that I would do is I needed to look at the finances, look at the revenue, and meet with members in the within the town that have institutional knowledge, understanding what the needs are, understanding where the city's goals are in the priorities. But a lot of it's going to come down to a review of the finances, putting together expense and revenue projections, revenue models, looking at additional funding. Grants are so important. When I worked in the city of Brockton, resources were limited. And so, I went with an organization called eCivis, and it's a national organization that actually did grant writing and looked at grants nationwide. And that's something that I turned to try to look at additional funding that was available. Anything, and I think that being a member of the MGFOA, I'm very being on that board, I have knowledge of what's happening in the state and being able to bring that to the town, knowing of grants and awards that are coming up, I'm able to try to minimize that. But in terms of priorities, you need to look at safety and you need to look at services and making sure that services aren't interrupted. So those are things that I would have to review when I come in. And, there's a lot of great things that are happening in Cohasset. I feel that I bring a lot of experience. And so my value would be added to Cohasset compared to coming in and wanting to change things. I've been in organizations where people want to change. And I don't feel like that's one thing that I've learned over the last 24 years is you need to look at the value that currently exists in an organization and what you bring to it to be able to enhance what that town or city currently has.
Great. Okay. Mr. Farag?
Thank you. As a small town, all of our employees have to be resilient like a Swiss Army knife, able to perform many different tasks and wear many different hats. Additionally, it's imperative in creating the town budget for the town and the leadership of the schools to work together harmoniously. In the past, Cohasset has had many different personalities between town manager and superintendent. Some have worked well together and others have not. What has been your experience in working with a superintendent, if you've had that experience, and how would you work with a superintendent to help create a budget?
I've had a lot of experience working with superintendents, and I think the most important is building a relationship, building trust, and letting that person know that you want to work with them. Working with the city of Brockton superintendent and working with the town of Carver superintendent, we have almost monthly meetings, working with the business manager, looking at revolving funds, looking at school choice, looking at circuit breaker, looking at ways that we can utilize funds to balance a budget. And so those are things that I feel is just really building a relationship, understanding trust, and understanding what some of their needs are and the challenges, but also sharing information with the town. And like I had mentioned before, it can't be split. It needs to be a joint effort when you're looking at the town and school, because as a whole, it's the whole town that's going to be affected. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Grady?
How do you build and maintain a productive working relationship with the select board that may have differing priorities or perspectives? Can you share an example of navigating that dynamic successfully?
Yes. So working in the town of Carver, I was new, and the select board had questions in terms of the budget and not having some past practice, not having information available in terms of time to be able to review it. And so what I did with the select board is I found out what their needs are, what they wanted, and I provided the budget, I provided information, and I provided salary information that they needed to allow them to make informed decisions. And I think that through that, being consistent in providing information, being available, sitting down, returning emails, and not just brushing it off. I felt like I've been able to build a very good rapport with the select board, with the finance committee. I've had multiple meetings. I provide monthly reports to the select board in the town of Carver and the finance committee. And so if there are differing opinions and people feel that, maybe the information that I'm providing, isn't accurate, if they have a different perspective, I always try to explain how I came up with the information. I share the information that I have, so it's very transparent. I meet with the select board, with the finance committee, after hours, during hours, and just try to build that relationship of trust. And so there have been times where, we've had oppositions, but they've been resolved just through being able to work through so that we both were on the same page and understanding what information was being presented.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Flex?
Excuse me. If selected, what would be your priorities in your first 100 days as town manager? And how would you approach learning, the organization, and building relationships across the community?
Okay, first 90 days, my first priority would be to meet all the department heads and get an understanding of the culture, meet the select board, meet with the different finance committees, understand what their priorities and the goals were. I would then look at the financial state of the town and review the financial statements, look at the bylaws, look at the financial policies, and see where the town currently is. And then I would meet with the department heads, and I'd have an open door policy. I think that I also would need to look at how are we prioritizing some of the largest challenges for Cohasset, the public safety facility. If the override isn't passed, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And those are things and decisions that I would need to collaboratively work with public safety. When we're looking, I look at climate change. I look at the, storm water. I'll look at stormwater and the flooding and try to meet with, the emergency management and see if there's a plan. I think that everything that you do, you need to be proactive and not reactive. So those are things that I would look at first, and then meet with the school department, meet with the superintendent, and start looking at the next fiscal year. We're already in FY27. You're going to town meeting next week. So these are times where we need to start planning for the next 5 or 10 years. And, some of this, a lot of the way, some of the things that I think about revolve around what I saw in Cambridge, under the leadership of a city manager that maintained a AAA bond rating, that maintained staff for decades. And one thing that I've, learned from them is that consistency, availability, understanding and listening, and having set policies is key to being successful, but being available, not having a door shut, having an open door policy, and being able to listen and allowing people to feel valued. That city that I work for, people didn't leave. I mean, you couldn't get promoted because nobody was leaving, because they really feel value and they felt the love of what they wanted to do. And I feel that comes from leadership. I feel that I've learned a lot over the years, and I can provide that leadership here in the town of Cohasset.
Thank you.
Okay. So my question is kind of the opposite. How do you, quote, take the temperature of staff morale, and when it is low, what do you do?
I'm going to go back to Brockton. When I went back to Brockton to be the city auditor, there was a position with 6 vacancies, and there were probably 2 or 3 people in the department managing payroll, managing AP, and the morale was horrible. People wanted to leave. They just didn't feel valued. They weren't happy when they came to work, and they wanted to leave. One thing I did was just building a relationship. I had meetings. I had staff meetings. One thing that I learned is that the staff wanted to be involved. They wanted to feel that the work that they did was, was part of the whole interest of the entire city. And when you're at staff meetings, when you're at select board meetings, you're at budget meetings, people that are, I wouldn't say down in the trenches, but people that are behind the scenes spending, hours on the weekend trying to balance a budget, hours trying to pay invoices, and they're paying 20, 100 invoices a day. They want to feel valued. They want to be acknowledged. And so those are things that I do to boost morale is, allowing people to feel that whatever skill you bring to the table, you bring value, and being part of the organization and being in the know of and understanding what's going on. And it's not something that you hear from a friend or you see on Facebook or social media, but hearing it from the manager, and then it being consistent and fair to everybody. I think that boost morale. And so that's something that I feel that I've been successful in. I have staff that I've hired in previous positions that are now filling city audit positions that I used to fill. And I feel that was just my leadership in really being able to have empathy, but to set expectations, but value and acknowledge the work that people are doing.
Great. I think we're back to you, Mr. Perot.
Great, thanks. My last question on these rounds. You could tell us about a time you used an innovative or creative approach to solve a complex problem in your organization. What was the challenge? What would you do differently? And what was the outcome?
Working in the town of Carver, we have a community preservation committee, and there is millions of dollars sitting in funds under historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space recreation. A lot of department heads, are looking to utilize those fundings. Of course, everything needs to go through the CPC committee. And, at crucial times when that funding can be used for eligible projects, people need to understand, the use of the funds. And so what I've done in Carver is that I met with the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and we began and I set up a schedule. And so beginning in May, we are having the Community Preservation Coalition come to the town of Carver. At their meeting, we're inviting the select board, the finance committee, department heads to understand what projects are eligible to be able to use these funding sources. And then we're putting together a process in terms that allows the residents to be active and to provide their project needs. And this is something that's going to be automated, and residents can go online. Well, they'll be able to go online, present projects based on eligibility that would be reviewed by the CPC, and it falls then into our capital plan. Because, with capital funding, you need to look at other resources other than sometimes bonding or using free cash. So with the use of the CPC funds and just an understanding of what this particular committee does and how the funds can be used is something that I'm working with. And this is going to move forward. This is going to move forward in the spring, and then it's going to begin in May, and it's going to go all the way through January. And it's just a process. This is a process that that I used in Cambridge, in terms of being able to fund projects and to be able to move forward with them where it's something that, people didn't know, or they're opposed to giving up funds and not really understanding. But I think that it allowed everyone to be part of the process. So I'm kind of looking forward to that moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
And I think I have the last question. How do you manage the influx of emails and calls from citizens and other boards and committee members wanting to be responsive and yet knowing at the same time you still have a town to run?
I don't sleep. That's a joke. I prioritize everything that I do. And, people, residents may have questions. I try to get back to residents, but I also try to, if I have emails coming in that are relevant to one particular topic, I make sure the information of what they're requesting, or if they have questions, is managed and is documented and is present so that people can see it, whether it's on a website or on the intranet. I'll make sure that that's public and it's posted. I'll also, in terms of the select board, I have to prioritize what the needs are of the town and make sure that services aren't interrupted. I rely on managers and I support the managers as well. And so we have meetings. And, as the town manager, I would have weekly meetings with the department heads so that I understood what was coming in. I think you also need to be able to prioritize and allocate and be able to, have other people also look into things as you're looking into things as well. If things get escalated to a level where a manager could not handle a question or handle a problem, I have no problem taking that on and working with that particular resident. But I think the most important is getting back to people. We're not going to have the answer for everything. Sometimes it's a public information request that requires, additional time, and it's a process that you would have to go through. And so I feel like that, I've been able to prioritize information for the select board, working with the departments. And, I've worked with every department. I've worked on having deadlines for select board, for the finance committee, being able to respond. I go away for vacation, I come back and there's like 100 emails, and I scan through them and I look at what are the top priorities. Do we have grants that need to be reported? Do we have an emergency that needs to be addressed? And so I feel that working in a municipal government, that's your job, and you're either committed to it 100% and that's your time, or you're not, or you try to be.
All right. Great. Thank you. I think that wraps up the questions from all of us. We really appreciate your time and your interest in Cohasset and in applying for this position. I'm sure Buzz or Bob will get back to you when we finish our process.
Okay, I thank you for the opportunity. I hope that the questions that you've asked, you've been able to learn a little bit about myself and my skill set and my interest in working for the town of Cohasset. And, I look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Before you go, just said, we've been asking you questions all night, Aaron, and I think you're entitled to ask us a few if you have any.
I do have some.
Oh, yes.
I do have some, if you don't mind. Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I only have 3 questions. What is the select board's top priority around community engagement on the public safety facility if the debt exclusion isn't passed?
What is our top priority? That's a tough one.
If it didn't pass,
If it doesn't pass, we have to do something for our public safety, for our police department. And whether we go back to the drawing board, where they are right now, it's not an option. It's not workable. It's not a feasible location. It's not a safe location for them. And we have looked at every option that we can, including town-owned land and not town-owned land, and that's a good question. Mr. Brady was on that committee. I'm going to punt.
this is basically option D, because we've looked at every available option, and we tried to engage the community best we can. Create the committee made up of people in construction, architectural, land use, building, and so we had people actually come in, Mr. Well, who were dead set against it, but then we hope, but working together. So you haven't seen our current situation down at Elm Street, but this is really where we're at. So the way I could put it was being on the select board when we purchased the building, and I won't belabor it, but a figure went out. We took a shot at this building because it's in an ideal location, and it's came back as we're looking for this budget cycle and this town meeting for more money. Wasn't what we aimed for, but we thought at the time it would be prudent to get our hands on the building. Did a preliminary study, so it's a workout. But the most important thing in the town is our police need it. That the 1960 building is past its shelf life, and it's up against a place where we don't have a lot of choices.
I completely understand. I was in Cambridge. We had a public safety building that I felt like was built in the 1800s, and they just needed a new facility. And so we were able to rent a building and we were able to purchase a building and, have the entire building renovated. So I completely understand. Thank you for answering that question.
Budget.
You did. You did.
Thanks, Ellen.
My pleasure.
With my second question, with the town undergoing a municipal reset, including several major projects at Highlander Ave, 41
Highland.
Highland
Ave,
Yep.
the public safety facility. How is the town prioritizing your sequence in these projects in order to still maintain your AAA bond rating and minimize any service interruptions?
So the town hall at 41 Highland Ave, going back to 2008, there had been studies done and on renovating the building. And David was actually on one of the committees, I want to say 2014, 2015.
It's the original in 2008.
Oh, you were on the original?
No.
Okay. And then there was another study that came out and we spent couple million on feasibility and all of that. The price tag came in at $12 or $14 million and the town said, no, that's way too much money. And meanwhile, the building was crumbling underneath or all around our town employees, and it wasn't functional for the public either in terms of, the interface. People come in, they still pay their taxes in person. They come in for certificates in person. So another group was formed and spent another $2 million on studies and feasibility and design. And we brought it to town meeting, and that price tag was $21.2 million. And then that also failed. And so we kind of got the message that the town didn't want to spend that much money on town hall. And we formed a working group and we said, how can we do this? Half of the building is historic. And We know that the town won't support what they perceive to be a Taj Mahal, nor was anyone asking for a Taj Mahal. How can we make a safe, comfortable environment for our town employees, something where they feel good about going to every day, something that is safe and efficient for our townspeople to go to? So we kind of did some back of the napkin ideas. We had just put on a roof that came in under budget. We knew the HVAC system was failing and we had to update that, but we knew in order to get the most efficient HVAC system, we had to replace the windows. And so we came up with money from capital budget and money from CPC to support the historic part. So there was no specific override question for the voters. And they approved both articles in the town meeting because they were part of the CPC and the capital budget. And the capital is being funded. So we also do keep track of our debt and what our payoff is. And we're looking at the school project of the early 2000s coming off debt so that we had capacity. And as you know, the AAA bond rating, you can borrow whatever you want, basically. I mean, it destroys your rating and it eats up your cash flow. We're not we have no desire whatsoever to borrow to our capacity, but we knew that we could afford it. And that's how we got Highland Ave done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
I have one last question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, just talking about your debt that's dropping off, what is the town's plan when your Norfolk County Retirement System pension has been fully funded? They're looking at, with the state, they're looking at 2040, but 2030, 2032. What are your priorities in terms of allocating that money that we currently use for assessments towards either OPEB, debt service, lowering tax rates? What are your priorities in terms of, I know we're looking, years out, but I feel like these are conversations and things that you need to look at. And so I was wondering what the board's priorities are for those funds that will be coming available.
Sure. So Mr. Davis, who is the head of the search committee, he's also head of our post-employment benefit committee and has been a stalwart advocate for us to fund our post-employment benefits. His committee also went at the request of our town manager at the time to Norfolk County because our fully funded pension was coming up much quicker. I think you're correct, like 2031, 2032. Cohasset's interesting because we're Norfolk County surrounded by Plymouth County. And they were successful, and the premiums were going to escalate at an exorbitant rate, over the next few years. So our PEB committee and our treasurer were very successful in lobbying Norfolk County to flatten out the obligation and extend the fully funded date. So we are now, I want to say, in the mid to late 2030s on that. When that is funded, there's no policy at the moment, but the conversation and the person's agreement is that 50% of what we would have spent in Norfolk County will go to fund PEB. Okay, so that will escalate our funding position for PEB and get us to fully funded in a quicker manner. The rest of that 50%, we have not had substantial conversation on whether it goes to free cash, whether it goes to operating budgets, whether it goes to reserve funds. You can never have too much money, but you're absolutely correct. Those are conversations the select board needs to begin to have.
My answer for you is this: we're going to have a big townwide.
I was just going to say that non-taxpayer funded one, but yeah, sure, that'll be a great day when it's fully funded.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, it will for everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Those are all the questions that I have, and I just thank you for the opportunity to be to interview for this position.
Thank you. It was
so very much.
very nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know. Okay. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. May we take you would like a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Works, your next candidate is here.
Oh, it's here.
Yeah, 5-minute break.
We'll take a 5-minute break because we are 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
Chairman members.
Hello.
Rebello. The assistant town manager in Provincetown.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. We met before. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Ellen Mar.
Madam Chair, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming and for applying for this position. We're very excited to get to know you a little bit. We have your materials, and I think we'll just jump right into questions, unless make it.
You ask him to introduce himself.
Introduce yourself. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. My name is Dan Ravello, currently the assistant town manager in Provincetown, where I've served for 4 years.
Pardon me.
Prior to that, I worked for the city of Cambridge. So I guess I'm your second Cambridge alum here tonight. Was there for about 11 years in different positions. And I'm really ready to take the next step in my career. I've worked under a really great town manager who's probably watching tonight. So hi, Alex, if you're watching this. And I think it's just the right time in both my personal and professional life to make the move to the South Shore and be in a community like Cohasset. I think you're at a really important turning point in the community where there's sort of trust that needs to be restored and transparency and communication that needs to be rebuilt. And I think that my background really fits those needs at this time. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight. And thank you again for having me.
Great. Thank you. So I'll start. We're going to go round robin. Okay. We're going to ask you the same questions we're asking all candidates. So besides the usual cliches, although they're all true about Cohasset, that it's a charming, affluent, educated, engaged, and informed community, what did you find most surprising, good or bad, when you researched Cohasset for this position?
I think the good thing is its maritime and fishing history, and the important role that the harbor still plays in the culture of the community. It reminds me a lot of Provincetown. The harbor is really important to us and our fishing history, especially the Portuguese fishing history. And I think that's just, that connection that I have from my years in Provincetown that is important here as well. So that's one of the things that I was interested in.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Farag.
Thank you. What has been the biggest failure in your public service career? What did you learn from it, and how did it change your approach?
I would say my biggest failure happened recently. We have been having a spirited debate around inclusive restrooms in Provincetown. And I was sort of tasked with forming a working group around that last year after we passed a non-binding citizen petition at town meeting. And I worked long hours, put a lot of work in with this one particular person who was interested in this topic. And at a certain point, sort of it fell apart. And what I learned from that is sometimes you can really have the best intentions, but sometimes you're not always working with an honest broker. And at some point, you sort of have to cut your losses and know that there's going to be another day. And so we brought what we thought was a really great compromise plan that increased inclusivity and accessibility in our public restroom in Provincetown. And this person got up and they railed against it and it failed. And so what I think we learned from that is that, you're not going to always win the battle, but you'll live to fight another day. And I think what it did was it showed the community that there was work that was being done. And even though the plan wasn't perfect, we did do our best. And I think if we bring it back at a future meeting, I think there'll be more time to educate the public and be able to get that passed. So, sometimes you have to lose to win in the long run.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Grady.
Tell us about a time you set expectations for department heads or other direct reports and held them accountable, while also maintaining a collaborative and supportive work environment. What was your approach and what was the outcome?
So I don't think there's a specific time. I mean, it's the job every day, right? So what we do is we go through a goal setting process with our department heads every year. We're actually starting that right now for the next fiscal year. They have to write down, 3 goals for the next fiscal year with specific deliverables under each of those goals. They have to submit them to us. We review them, meet with them, and then we sort of roll those up to the select board with our proposed town manager goals and deliverables for the next fiscal year. And then what I did is I created a very detailed tracking sheet for all of those goals and deliverables. And we check in with department heads and get updates from them throughout the year so that when we have to go before the select board at the end of the year and the town manager has his performance review, we can show them that very detailed tracking sheet with where we are with each of those deliverables. And we have to hold those department heads accountable for living up to their issues that are on that sheet. So that's been something that I've implemented that I think has worked really well. But it's having regular check-ins with department heads. What's going on? Where is this project? Where do you need more assistance? And things like that. And having that open door policy to make sure that they know that when they hit a roadblock, they can come to me and say, all right, I've taken this as far as I can. I don't know where to go from here. And we can have that honest conversation about what the next steps are.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Plex.
When addressing an operating budget shortfall, how would you prioritize identifying new revenue opportunities and implementing budget cuts while maintaining service levels? Can you provide an example?
Sure. I mean, this year we faced about $1 million budget shortfall going into budget season. And we realized that we had some unfilled positions. So that was the first place that we went. Rather than looking at cutting services, what are the positions that have been budgeted for that haven't been filled? And so we made those choices. There was another position where someone was nearing retirement. And so we had an honest conversation with them about the position no longer being funded in the next fiscal year and absorbed those duties with other staff in town. And so that's sort of where we should look first. Obviously, we always need to be looking at revenues and local receipts and any ability to get additional revenue that way. But I think it's about making sure that you're running it as efficient and lean as organization as you can to continue providing the level of service that residents rely on and expect.
Thank you.
Okay. How would you handle the perfect storm of aging infrastructure and cost exceeding revenues, which you kind of just answered, of the fiscal challenges facing most, if not all, of the communities in the Commonwealth, and in particular Cohasset in terms of priorities and planning?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? Every town, every candidate, every municipality is going through this, whether it's this year, it's going to be next year. So I think we all just have to be honest and eyes wide open, right? Every decision that we make, every position that comes empty, every time there's a retirement, we need to have a real honest conversation. Does that need to be refilled? Can those duties be absorbed? And we have to check in. I mean, I want to have at least quarterly check-ins with department heads and with finance about budget to actuals. Where are we at so far? What's going well? Where are we under? Where are we over? Is the reason we're over because we spend money early in the fiscal year and we're gonna sort of get it back at the end? And we have to have a real emphasis on going after as many grant opportunities as possible. That's something that we've been really successful about in Provincetown, especially on the capital side, to be able to help continue to make those capital investments. There really is a lot of money out there that it's pretty easy to get for many cities and towns. And we just have to make sure that we have department heads that are focused on that and that it's a goal and a priority that we do not lose sight of.
I have a follow-up question to that. So what are some of the big capital issues Provincetown is facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, a huge one is townwide sewer. So we passed that within a month of me getting there, going municipal sewer townwide, $75 million plus project that we've really been able to absorb the cost of from state, federal grants, other sources, betterments, obviously, for folks that are connecting. One of the other things we did was a large $12 million investment in a public park. It's our largest public park that hadn't really had any real investment since the 70s. And it was an amazing community engagement process. It's been completely reimagined. We got approval at that with town meeting with hardly any opposition. And then we got $1 million grant to offset the cost of it. And right now we're about $2 million under, and the park will be opening next month. So it's about being smart, checking in knowing the finances and going after every single grant opportunity that you possibly can. So even if you get that approval for 12 million, I don't want to spend it, right? I want to spend 10. And that'll give us more opportunity and availability when we go for the next project, because we were 2 million under on that one.
Great. Okay, Mr. Ferrari.
Great, thank you. The town manager role often extends beyond the typical 9 to 5 schedule due to meetings, community events, and emergencies, such as when we had the snowfall this winter. How do you ensure you can meet those demands? And are there any commitments that would limit your ability to fully meet the time and availability expectations of this role?
No, I mean, that is the job, right? You need to be there for the community, in the community at the drop of a hat. That's one of the reasons that I'm really interested in this position and relocating to the South Shore. My family lives here. My mom is here. She's a widow. My husband's family lives here. His mom's a widow. And so, that juggling act of being able to come visit them, but having to be out of town and hoping something doesn't happen when you're an hour and a half from Provincetown sort of wears on you, right? So I think the ability to be much closer to work and family will make that easier. But you talk about the snowstorm. I mean, we were hit incredibly hard in Provincetown. We opened and ran a shelter as a standalone community that supported Provincetown residents, Truro residents, even a Wellfleet resident, with no help from the county or the state for 5 days. I was there embedded in the shelter. I slept there overnight the first night. I had no electricity, heat, or hot water at home myself. And I was there from at least 7 to 11 every day until it was lights out for the 40 to 50 people that we were taking care of. It was a really rewarding and eye-opening experience. I think people have this idea that, like, when you have a shelter, it's people are going to come and they're going to be all right and they're going to be, sort of self-sustaining. Our shelter was really for the most vulnerable in our community. We had people there ages 6 months to 80, folks who had no other family or friends that could take them in. And we really cared for them in a way that I'm incredibly proud of. And it's probably one of my biggest achievements in municipal government. And it's because we were focused on putting the needs of our residents first and not just shoving them on a cot and saying, well, you're safe and warm. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Great. Mr. Grady.
Might go back to the snowstorm, but describe a time you led an organization or team through a significant change. How did you manage resistance and ensure successful implementation?
Yeah, that was more of a challenge than a change, the snowstorm. So I'll use a different example. We historically had a volunteer fire department forever in Provincetown until 2 years ago, when we realized that model was no longer going to work anymore. We had a chief who had been chief for 40 years. We had done special acts to extend his tenure. And he wasn't willing to understand that we needed to move in a new direction, to have a combination department that was able to support the community year round. We have the longest ambulance run to a hospital of anywhere in the Commonwealth. So we couldn't really get by with volunteers anymore. And we had some tough conversations with the chief. He chose to retire, and he misrepresented, I think, what we were trying to do in the conversations that we had, to the point where 20 of the volunteer members of the fire department showed up at a select board meeting 2 days before the 4th of July and walked out. And the reason that we were able to weather that storm is because we were completely transparent with the select board from the get-go. They knew what was going on. They knew what our plan was. They knew why it was the right decision. They supported us in that decision, and they were able to weather the storm with us. And that is so important. We wouldn't have been able to get through that if we hadn't made sure that the select board was aware of everything that was going on, and we didn't share the same goals and priorities to professionalize the fire department. And so, that was rocky. But one of the things that we did is we reached out to the former deputy chief, who had been there for 35 years alongside that chief who had retired. And we asked him to come back during the transition. So he did, and the community saw that we had somebody that they trusted, who had been around for a while and who was going to be able to lead the department into now the process where we're hiring our first full-time chief. We now have 24 full-time people in the Provincetown Fire Department. It's working incredibly well. We've increased coverage, and everybody in the community, maybe except the former fire chief, is very happy with how things have turned out.
Okay, Mr. Plex.
How do you ensure clear, consistent, and transparent communication across staff, boards, and committees and the community? Can you provide a specific example?
Sure. I mean, communications is really my wheelhouse. That's how I got my start in municipal government, working for the city of Cambridge, having to communicate lots of complex information to 110,000 residents. And now I think it's worked really well in Provincetown that I have such a closeness to the operations that is so important for clear and consistent communications, right? You need to know what's actually going on inside departments, what work is being done, where the issues are, to be able to clearly communicate out to the public. So we provide regular updates. We send press releases out. We post news on the website every day. We're constantly updating social media, both Facebook and Instagram. And we just have to make sure that it's out there. But it's not just about posting information on the website, right? Every choice we make in terms of the process is also really important. I think that's a part of transparency that often gets lost, right? Where are we holding the meeting? What time of day are we holding the meeting? Who's being invited? How is that information being shared so that we're reaching the stakeholders that really need to be aware of things and be able to participate in the process? And we know that people have lots of things that they need to do, right? They got to get their kids from school to practice. They need to get their 10,000 steps a day and hit their protein goals and all of that stuff, right? So it's hard to also ask them to come to public meetings. And that's why it's really important for us to make sure that we're putting information out in front of people where they might be. So I thought of an example, related to the tennis court resurfacing issues. It's great to be able to share that update at the select board, right? But make sure that there's signage at those courts explaining what the issue is and that we know there's a problem, and then have a QR code to the larger letter explaining what's going on and things like that. You got to meet people where they are and not expect them to always come to you.
Thank you.
Blue? Okay. How do you take the temperature of staff morale, and what do you do when it's low?
I would say that's probably the most important thing I do every day is I have a completely open door policy. When I started with the town, every department was reporting to the town manager. And I quickly realized that that was not sustainable because he doesn't have time to deal with every single department head. They get scared to bring issues to the town manager because they're worried that they might get in trouble or it's not important enough for his time, things like that. My office was originally supposed to be in the basement. And when I got there, I said, I can't be down here. I've got to be next to you. I need to be where the information is so we can build that relationship and I can be there for staff. So when you come in town hall, I'm like the first office on the left. So every resident, every staff member comes to be multiple times a day for quick check-ins. And you can feel the vibe, right? I can see my community development director come in when he is just at his wit's end because of a staff issue or something that went wrong in a report that he wrote, and he feels terrible and he's sort of shouldering that burden. So it's important to be able to have honest conversations with your staff. It's not the end of the world. Here's what happened. We're going to explain what it was and why, and hopefully the select board will understand and we won't make that same mistake again. But it's, just being the person that is sort of aware, working closely with HR, making sure that we do have, sort of staff outings or appreciation events every so often. We instituted every June, we do a pride event for our staff. Every December, we have a holiday party. Those are things that didn't happen before I got there. And it really, people come up to you after and they thank you for it. It does mean a lot to them. It doesn't cost us a lot of money, but it's really important to show that they're more than just sort of cogs in the wheel. And sometimes we just have to close the door and sort of just have a little scream fest together in a good way, right? What are your frustrations? Let's close the door and let's talk about them because we all feel them. And I really believe that working in municipal government, especially now, is one of the most difficult jobs that there is. I don't think people generally understand that, you are carrying the stress and the needs and the wants of your entire community. And then you go to the grocery store and somebody stops you in the aisle and wants to talk about it after you've already worked 50 hours that week and you just want to get in there and get your chicken and get out. We talk about those things, and I think it's just being approachable and having staff know that you're there for them. You feel the frustrations too. You have the stresses too. But at the end of the day, we're going to get through it together, and there'll always be another issue, another fight, and another day.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Mr. Farag.
As a small town, all of our employees have to be resilient like Swiss Army knives, able to perform many different tasks and wear many different hats. Additionally, it's imperative in creating the town budget for the town and the leadership of the schools to work together harmoniously. In the past, Cohasset has had many different personalities between town manager and superintendent. Some have worked well together, others have not. What has been your experience in working with a superintendent, if you have that experience? And if not, how would you work with a superintendent creating a budget?
Yeah, so the school committee just hired a new superintendent about a year ago. And so this budget season was his first time through it. And before that, we had a superintendent who had done a really great job presenting the budget to the select board. So we started by sharing that with him and saying, here is what has worked well in the past, what the select board really likes to see. Try to build your budget sort of similar to this. So he did that, came back to us with his draft. We met and went through it. There were a couple of line items that we sort of chatted about. One unfilled position that we asked if they could remove so that we could, lower their budget. He was amenable to that. But at the same time, he came to us and said, we're leasing school buses. We have the opportunity to buy this. It's going to cost $50,000, but it's going to save us money in the long run. And we pulled that into the town's CIP and funded that with no issue whatsoever. So it's having that relationship, being collaborative, but also, having honest conversations throughout the process. I don't have any control over what they ultimately do, but we all have to manage and absorb it together. Having that relationship, having regular check-ins where we could just be honest with each other is going to be really important. And that's what I would certainly want to do here.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Grady.
How do you build and maintain a productive working relationship with the select board that may have differing priorities or perspectives? Can you share an example of navigating that dynamic successfully?
Sure. I mean, we have a 5-member select board in Provincetown. They all are unique personalities with different needs. But I have a relationship with all of them. And what the town manager does and what I would want to do here is we have regular check-in meetings. So weekly or bi-weekly, just meetings with each select board member. It's up to them if they want to cancel or not, if they don't have anything they want to talk about, but to have those regular check-ins on the calendar so that we can make sure that that we're working together and moving in the right direction. And then really my job is to put forth the best policy recommendations and advice that I possibly can based on meetings with town staff and where the budget's at and priorities set by the select board. But at the end of the day, you're the policymakers, you're the deciders. So again, we're not going to agree on everything, but we need to be able to have those disagreements without being disagreeable. And I think I've been able to do that in Provincetown, and I would look forward to being able to do that with all of you soon.
Mr. Plex?
If selected, what would be your priorities in your first 100 days as town manager? And how would you approach learning the organization and building relationships across the community?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I would want to do is have listening sessions with staff. I think it's incredibly important. It's the one thing that I've missed as part of this process is getting to know staff and department heads. It's going to be really important to listen. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What are those things every day that seem to make their job so difficult and are unsolvable, right? Let's have those discussions. How can we make headway there? And then the same thing with the community. Again, I haven't had a chance to meet residents and hear from community members directly about what their priorities are, why there's this sort of mistrust and this social media issue going on. Why is that? Where is that coming from? And how can we help solve that? So listening and meeting folks, both on staff and in the community, would be the first thing I would want to do.
Thank you.
Hey, sir. back to me. How do you, is that correct? Are we back? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. How do you manage the influx of emails and calls from citizens and other boards and committee members wanting to be responsive and yet knowing you have a town to run?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of running the town is being responsive, right? You have to be able to juggle all of that, even if it's to tell people no. If it's to redirect them to the right person who can help them or answer their question. And sometimes it's just being honest and saying, you know what, it's a really busy time of year. We're headed into town meeting. You know, if you could follow up with me in mid-May, I'm happy to have a conversation, right? But those are things, you know, someone who has been in the workforce for the municipal workforce for 15 years in communications, community engagement. People don't trust you if you ignore them. You can't always give them the answer that they want. You can't always solve their problem, but you do need to be able to make time to listen. So it is part and parcel to running the town. It's not sort of a siloed activity in my view.
That's me. To me.
Okay, so you have one more?
Yep.
Okay.
If you could tell us about a time you used an innovative or creative approach to solve a complex problem in your organization. What was the challenge? What did you do differently? What was the outcome?
I think I have two examples. One is sort of innovative and one is just sort of old school, thinking outside the box. So I'll go with the innovative one first. You know, I am currently in a municipal government program around AI and how municipal government can use it. And one of the things that I put together, you know, we all use these Civic Plus websites for all of our towns, right? The search is horrible. It's horrible in every town. You cannot find what you're looking for on these websites. So I built an AI search agent, like a chatbot, and I implemented it and embedded it on the town's website. You can ask it a question like, how do I get a parking permit? And it immediately tells you the hours that the parking permit office is open, where you can find it, how you can apply online. And then I can go into the back end and see every question that's been asked and every way that the agent answered. And I can update it if it doesn't get it quite right, so that the next time the question is perfect, right, to the way that we would want it answered. And so that not only makes it easier for people to find information on the website, but it cuts down on calls and emails to staff. And it provides a better customer service experience to the user, to our customer, right? People are used to using them on Amazon and every time that they're online shopping and anywhere else on the internet. And town government shouldn't be a place where you can't get those instant answers as well in a usable and actionable way. So that's something I'm really proud of. And then something else is just sort of again, I talk about those like intractable problems that some staff just can't figure out a solution for, that really just gets them every day when they go to work. And one example is that we moved our parking permit office to the basement of Town Hall outside of our community development department. And they have a big window where they have to serve a lot of people every day who are coming in for permits. And the parking permit office was just beyond that window. And the two administrative assistants drafted up a letter to the town manager that was pretty pointed. And the community development director sent it to me first. And I said, they absolutely can't send that. That's not going to go well for anyone, but have them come meet with me and let's talk through exactly the pain points of this whole issue. And so they came, we spent about 20 minutes together. I explained to them why the parking permits needed to be there. It wasn't just that we were shoving it there to make their lives miserable. It was that people have to pay their any unpaid taxes before we'll issue them a parking permit. And the treasurer collector's office is upstairs. So rather than sending people to the police department halfway across town to get permits and then find out they have unpaid taxes and make them travel to town hall, we needed to provide a higher level of customer service for residents. And that's why it needs to be in the building. Nobody had ever explained that to them before. So this sort of angst that they had, that we just didn't care about their workload and how often they were being bothered about by people asking about parking permits. You sort of saw the light bulb right there in that 20-minute meeting with them. And I said, but what can we try to do to relieve some of that burden? And they said, well, you should hire someone to sit downstairs and point people to the parking permit office. And I said, okay, well, I just want to talk to you about the budget situation that we're in. And, you know, we just cut 5 positions, so we can't hire anyone. But let me think about what we might be able to do. So I got some stanchions and I made some color coded signs and I bought two different colors of tape and I went down the next week and I put arrows on the floor and a sign pointing to the parking permit office and a sign pointing to community development. And I check in with them weekly and they're like, no issues. Everything's great. Right. So it's not really innovative, right? Putting arrows on the floor, but it's an innovative way of thinking and being open to conversations with staff and hearing what those pain points are and trying to think of new ways to solve it that staff might not, have the whole picture of.
I have a follow-up question
Sure.
to that. You mentioned Community Development Department.
Mhm.
Can you just quickly articulate what that encompasses?
Sure. So our community development department oversees building, licensing, planning, zoning, the health department, housing. So yeah, it's sort of the umbrella department for all of those things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
What do you think town staff need in their next town manager?
Everyone's looking at me.
One who shows up at 8 a.m.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think, when we worked on this process, we talked about leadership, and leadership comes in many forms. There's the old adage, do what I do.
Mhm.
If I want my teammates to be as fast as they can be, then I have to be as fast as I can be.
Yep.
There's a lot of what you said, have an open door, be approachable. If you give someone permission to do something, to make a decision, you need to support the decision, but you can navigate them. If you didn't agree with the decision, you can navigate them to a different pathway for the next time with thoughtful instruction and collaborative dialogue for that. I think, be there when they're there. I mean, I have a staff and we all of 7 and we were all in at different times. So you have to have some common time when people are around. Now, probably in Provincetown, as in Cohasset, there are meetings that go quite late at night that our town manager, our admins, our town accountant, have to go to, whether it's capital advisory, and sometimes they're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. So as long as the town manager communicates, I'm going to be in at 9 tomorrow instead of 8.
Yep.
I think that's fine. We can't necessarily micromanage a town manager in terms of their time, but their staff needs. I had a boss a long time ago. He said, if I come looking for you and your staff doesn't know where you are, that is your problem, right? So you have to let people know where you are. So I think that's important. I think you have to be able to manage the small stuff and look at the big picture at the same time. Okay. Because as you know, in municipal government, there's a lot of small stuff, whether it's going through the budget and the line item and the $2,000 we allocate to the HVAC system at Osgood School for maintenance every single year. Do we really spend $2,000 a year? But to the bigger picture, what is facing us as a town from the perfect storm of finance, where we are with increasing costs and decreasing revenues and infrastructure projects. So you kind of have to wear both hats. You have to be, you can't be what's the expression? A jack of all trades, master of none.
That's right.
You kind of have to be a master of all trades in some respect.
Definitely. But that's what's exciting about the job, right? Like I explain to my friends all the time who have like real jobs in the corporate world, right? I have to sometimes from half hour to half hour be able to talk intelligently about a vastly different topic than the meeting I was in a half hour before. And that's what keeps me going every day, right? It's learning those new things and being able to talk intelligently and have an opinion and bring good advice to all of you so that we can continue to move the town forward. So very excited about that.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I'll simplify what I'm thinking. I think what we're not looking for is a do as I say, not as I do individual. Somebody that will roll up their sleeves. Our staff's been through a lot. We've had some changes here. We're going through physical changes, social media attacks, things like that. And, just a number of issues. Try to, keep a cohesive team. And what we're looking for is someone who's going to pitch in, roll up their sleeves and work with them. And they don't work for them. And that works for the town of Cohasset, but also for the residents, but can also, in a sense, protect their team.
Yep.
I think that's very important because there are lifeblood here, and that I think everybody wants to know they're respected, that they're wanted, that they're needed, and that the talents are appreciated, and that someone is not going to blame, but sit with, discuss if there's an issue. Or I think it's key that people feel that they're comfortable going to somebody because you're a leader. Right now, it sounds like you're doing very well at it. And that's, I think, a key ingredient is earning the trust, respect, because it's an earned thing, whether you're hired as a manager, a town manager, or anyone. But if you don't have the respect, that's something that has to be earned by people. That's our hope. I hope anyway. I won't speak for the board, but is really someone will roll up the sleeves and jump in with the team and continue to make Cohasset a better place each and every day.
Great. I mean, that's music to my ears. I mean, I would never ask staff to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. We've had two winters ago, we had just seemed like almost week after week, these terrible coastal storms that were impacting a part of town that had never been impacted really before. It wasn't the typical direction that the wind and the waves were coming from. And every time that we thought that there was going to be flooding at high tide, I was out there with the DPW director, with the community development director, in my rubber boots, moving sandbags for residents. I mean, it's true. People notice those things. After the shelter, my harbor master, who we had driving the COA van to bring seniors to and from their homes, he said, Dan, I would follow you into war. And that means the world to me. And so hearing that from you, again, gets me really excited about what I could do here.
Thank you very much.
Roy, did you have anything?
I would just say that the town manager position, as we talked about when we first started this off, has evolved from when it was first created in the mid 80s. The town has evolved since then. And the next town manager, from my perspective, is to bring the town to the next step and bring it into the 21st century in every aspect, administratively, with all the different technology that can be used. And at the end of that, it's not just for the sake of doing it, it's to provide the citizens with the best, most efficient government that they're paying for. And so it's really about taking that next step. And as I said, we've evolved to this point. We have positions in the town and departments in the town that we didn't have 15 years ago. And added for reasons that they're needed, and it's time to take that next step. And so that's what this whole process is about.
I appreciate that, and as someone who was also created in the mid '80s, I really look forward to that evolution as well.
Mr. Flex.
The social media thing has come up a couple of times, and I continue to be amazed by how much easier it seems to be to rattle off a negative comment without any research relative to a compliment on social media. So I think what would really be helpful from a town manager here is amplify the compliments that come in, but when something negative comes in, make sure the hardworking, dedicated town staff that we have understand what's really coming across as frustration about something. And there may be a real foundation to that frustration, but it shouldn't be taken personally. And it's up to the town manager to help navigate, why does the community feel this way? If there's misinformation out there, let's correct that. But make sure town staff understands that if there is a criticism, that it shouldn't be a criticism that was directed in the way it was. So managing that and being a bit of a therapist, I think is critical in this day and age.
No, I think you're exactly right. And when I first started in Provincetown and I was meeting in the staff, to a person, they would all bring up Facebook. Unprompted. Oh, well, Facebook and this and it's that the tide has really turned on that. Obviously, it's still happening out on Facebook, but staff are less, I think, personally bothered by it and checking it constantly because we have built, I think, a really strong foundation of the communications that we're proactively putting out and explaining things in a way that answers questions up front. I think that's one of the most important things is that I am always thinking like a resident. If I was to get this information, what would my question be? What would feel a little bit off about me in the way this is being presented and how and where and why, right? And so it's being able to sort of predict what those are so that when you're putting out the proactive communication, you're answering as many of those things up front as possible. And I think I talked about this with the search committee. It's not getting into the weeds on the different community pages and commenting back and forth, but it's redirecting to the appropriate information on the town's official channels. And it's educating people that that is the true source of information to go to. I don't want people to be so focused on social media that it prevents them from doing the service that they're supposed to be doing every day. And I think we also all have to just sort of try to level set with each other and know that we are the easiest target in a world that's on fire, right? Your federal government might be failing you, or your gas prices have gone up and your cost of living is difficult as well. And you feel like there's no trust or transparency and you don't know the next thing that's going to come out on the news, right? And we're the easiest target for that. So if we can be as clear-eyed and as communicative as we possibly can, I think we can turn down the heat a little bit and build that trust with the community back.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Great,
so
thank
much.
you. It was very nice
Thank
meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. We are half an hour ahead of schedule.
One more 5-minute break and everything.
So we'll take another break.
Interview E.
Okay.
Larry.
Hello, Miss Leary.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for being here and thank you for applying. The other candidates had a few opening remarks. I don't know if you prepared anything or you want to wing it, or floor is yours.
I have not prepared anything. I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's been a wild ride for the past 6 months. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I look forward to building on what has happened in the past 6 months, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. All right, so we're going to go round robin on the questions, okay? And I will start. Besides the usual cliches, although they're all true, that Cohasset is a charming, affluent, educated, engaged, and informed community, what did you find most surprising, good or bad, when researching Cohasset for this position? And the caveat is you didn't necessarily have to research it, but I'm sure you have found things that have surprised you about this town.
Yes. So while Cohasset is an affluent community, there's still those financial pressures, just like with every other community. Prop 2.5 and new growth, you're stuck within your financial capacity. So there's structural deficit problems, and that's something that not only towns like on the South Shore have to overcome, but also Cohasset has to overcome these. So we're all playing in the same field of Prop 2.5, new growth. There's structural deficits, and the best way to overcome that is to look at a 5-year projection of what we have for capital improvement needs, what our workforce looks like,
how we can how we can improve our workforce, how we can improve the way we manage certain projects. So all of those things are consistent, whether it's Cohasset, Hull, Situate, or any community. So.
Great, thank you. Mr. Farag.
Great, thank you. What has been the biggest failure in your public service career? What did you learn from it, and how did it change your approach?
Sure. So, unfortunately, the biggest failure is a large project we had. We worked tirelessly to get funding through CPC for the tennis court project. We went through all of the channels. We procured the project efficiently. We worked with the designer. We hired a contractor. Unfortunately, the tennis courts construction was inferior. I had to overcome that with communicating with the community, communicating with the contractors. We had to make sure that the community was protected. It was a large investment, and we had to make sure that the tax dollars that were spent on these courts were protected. So therefore, working with the contractor and making sure we had a guarantee and a warranty for the work that exceeded the original warranty. And then subsequently, after the courts we thought were completed, we found another challenge this year. And again, we had to work with the contractor to make sure that the courts were, again, warranted in a different capacity to make sure the town was protected. It was a large investment. It was an exciting project. And to have that black eye on the project, it wasn't great.
Mr. Grady.
Tell us about a time you set expectations for department heads or other direct reports and held them accountable, while also maintaining a collaborative and supportive work environment. What was your approach, and what was the outcome?
Right. So I think the biggest approach here is people want to be heard, right? Staff wants to be heard. So you set expectations with timelines, and it's not, you have to lead by example as well, right? So if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get the work done, the department heads actually see that and follow suit. So you set an expectation, you set a timeline, you do check-ins, and you make sure that the work is completed. But that's also a top-down process. So you take the select board goals, and then you have a department head meeting, and you make sure everyone has a part of it. You want your employees' voices to be heard. You want them to have buy-in in a project. You want them to feel good about the work that they're doing. And the only way to do that is get them involved.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Plex.
When addressing an operating budget shortfall, how do you prioritize identifying new revenue opportunities and implementing budget cuts while maintaining service levels? And can you provide an example?
Okay, so going through the budget cycle this year, we've seen some structural deficits that we have. We have increasing health costs, increasing liabilities, and these are fixed costs. These aren't something that you can change within, a 6-month period of the first budget cycle. But you do have to look at the whole picture. We work with the schools collaboratively to make sure that they're getting the funding they need. We want to maintain level services. So therefore, we have to make sure we're working more efficiently. We did have to reduce staffing, but by reducing staffing, we actually re-interviewed the staff that was losing time or positions to see if they were better suited in another position that we weren't going to reduce. So we had those tough conversations. We made sure there was a collaborative approach and that the schools in the town felt good about where they were with their budget. And then we just move forward. And I think it's all about relationship building and making people feel empowered. And in doing so, I feel as though those reductions really aren't as challenging as they may appear to be.
Thank you.
So how would you handle the perfect storm? I mean, you've already addressed some of this, but maybe you can wrap it up. Handle the perfect storm of aging infrastructure and cost exceeding revenue that we're experiencing, of the fiscal challenges facing all of the communities in the Commonwealth, but particularly in Cohasset in terms of priorities and planning.
Yeah. So as I said before, we have that structural deficit, right? Where we have to live within 2.5 in new growth. And as far as new growth numbers, there's not a lot of new growth happening in Cohasset. We've seen that over the past few years.
We're hoping to see additional growth, maybe on 3A, but there's constraints. There's lack of sewer. There's no, this Title V is really unavailable there. There's no parking along that area. And we really have to look at a 5-year, 10-year plan. And that is not only an operational plan, but a capital plan. We have to make sure that we weave those together and that we have a complete outlook into the future. Because without that, if we're just reactive, we're only taking a snapshot in time. We really have to have a better understanding of 5 and 10 years and what that looks like before we can make any decisions moving forward.
Great, thank you. Mr. Frog.
Great, thank you. The town manager role extends beyond the typical 9 to 5 schedule due to meetings, community events, and emergencies, such as when we had the snow this winter. How do you ensure you can meet those demands? And are there any current commitments that would limit your ability to fully meet the time and availability expectations of this role?
So the short answer is there are no constraints. If this was a few years ago, I would say there'd be constraints. I'm in a good position now to take on additional work, and I feel as though this is what I've worked for. I started here 10 years ago. I obviously had some family constraints. I had a daughter who's now graduating high school, going to college. So therefore, I have additional time to dedicate to the town. And, I think, attending some community events is great. I enjoy the CYBSA opening day. I think that's exciting. I love to go up to Milliken and see the kids playing soccer. These are things that I enjoy doing in my free time, so it doesn't seem like work. So I don't have any time constraints, and I am dedicated to the community.
Mr. Brady.
Describe a time you led an organization or team through a significant change. How did you manage resistance and ensure successful implementation?
So there's 2 things that I can speak about here. I'm going to go back to one, which is COVID. We often forget COVID was one of the most difficult things to manage. We worked tirelessly, I would say, for an entire year, every single day. We had limitations as to providing PPE for our workers, for the community. At the same time, our wastewater treatment plant was failing. We had to procure membranes from overseas. How do you get them here? What do we do? So we had to work through all those challenges. How do you have town meeting? Where do you have it? So that was a significant challenge. I think we were overcome because we have a terrific team and a terrific community. And I think everyone working together was really important to make sure we could overcome any challenges, and we overcame them together. Because it was the first time we were charting that course, and without the help of the community and our team, I don't think we could have done it. And I think that's one of the most significant challenges. The second is becoming interim town manager. So that happened within a 24-hour period. I took on the opportunity. I enjoy every second of it, but it was a challenging time. It was budget season. There were some difficulties with the budget, as you know. So it was really like jumping in and making sure that, you learn on the fly and you make sure that you can get your team involved. And without the work of our team, I don't know that I would have been successful as quickly as I was as the interim town manager, because everyone worked together and everyone rallied around everyone to make sure that we were successful as a team.
Thank you.
Great, Mr. Plex.
How do you ensure clear, consistent, and transparent communication across staff, boards, and committees and the community? Can you provide a specific example?
Sure. So I think one of the major things with communications is honesty, just being honest, open, and willing to share a message, whether it be difficult or not. I think oftentimes we're expected to almost, how do I say this? we want to give everyone the most positive answer out there. And sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes the answer is no, or sometimes this is not working. And you have to be ready to give those difficult answers when asked. I would say, I'm going to go back to the tennis courts again. When we had that significant failure this spring, I think the challenge there was, how do we communicate this? And what do we say? Well, you know what? We say exactly what happened, because that's the only thing we can say. If we're not honest, we lose credibility. So we have to be honest, be credible. And I think that will bode well in the future.
Thank you.
Great. So it's back to me. But no.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So how do you, temperature of staff morale, and when it is low, what do you do?
Yeah. So I think I do that every day. I make sure that when I'm in the building, I'm there on time. I make sure that I'm seen. I make sure I go into each department and see how everyone, what their goals are for the week, what their goals are for the month. Do they need any assistance? Are they hearing any feedback that may be negative or positive? Do they want to share anything? I think just keeping an open dialogue with the staff is paramount. Sometimes you'll hear things that, don't necessarily make you feel great, but it's things that you'll improve upon. If you have a staff member say, I don't feel as though I'm heard, I don't feel as though I'm part of the team, well, then let's make sure you are heard and make sure you are part of the team, because you are. Every staff member is extremely important to everything we do, and we have to make sure that they feel that way. And giving them a voice and making sure we check in with them is very important.
Thank you.
Now, as a small town, all of our employees have to be resilient like Swiss Army knives, able to perform many different tasks and wear many different hats. Additionally, it's imperative in creating a town budget for the town and the leadership of the schools to work together harmoniously. In the past, Cohasset has had many different personalities between town manager and superintendent. Some have worked well together, others have not. What has been your experience in working with a superintendent? If you've had that experience, and how would you work with a superintendent in developing a budget?
Yeah. So I'm thankful that I have had that opportunity. I've had the opportunity to work with Superintendent Shannon. It's been a great experience. As I stated before, this budget cycle was tough. But we worked together. We met weekly. We made sure that we each had a set of goals and priorities. And we made sure that, we were able to give and take. If the schools needed something, they were open and honest about their dialogue, and we made sure that we could get them what they needed. In the same respect, we were honest with the schools to say, we also have to provide level service to the town. And how do we do that if we concede all of our resources to the schools? And just our relationship and building upon that relationship made that budget process so much easier, because it was better to look at a whole picture than just looking at schools versus town. And I think we can only build upon that relationship. I just think this year was very special in the fact that I came in as interim, and immediately we built upon it, and it was fast. And we speak weekly now, even though the budget cycle's over. We've built a nice relationship, and I hope to build on it even further.
Thank you.
Ms. Brady.
How do you build and maintain a productive working relationship with a select board that may have differing priorities or perspectives? Can you share an example of navigating that dynamic successfully?
Sure. So just like anything, all select board members have different personalities, and you may all have different goals. However, at the beginning of each year, you set goals and priorities, and we have to keep that in perspective. We have to make sure that when we're having dialogue, that we always come back to those priorities and goals that are being set. Everyone can have a difference of opinion. However, the goal setting and the priorities and the policies is something we always have to bring everything back to. We can't stray from that. And if we do, then unfortunately, we probably won't get anything done. So we have to make sure that the board is cohesive, and we always have to bring it back to the policies and goals set by the select.
so much.
So can I ask a follow-up question to someone else's question? Okay. So on that, Ms. Leary, sometimes, as we know, the board set goals in June, July, August, when after the election. But we've become quite a dynamic world and things can change on a dime. How do you see managing preset goals with current events with the select board?
That's a great question. So we all know it here. So oftentimes your preset goals, they morph into additional goals. And maybe we can't fulfill all those goals within 1 year, but it builds upon the next year. So your goal is 135 King Street to get a public safety building. We've had the challenges last fall where we had to take that off the ballot and off the town meeting floor. And the reason being is you wanted more. You wanted to hear more. You wanted to hear more from the community. And I think we corrected the course and made sure that we were able to do that while still keeping that main goal in perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Plex?
If selected, what would be your priorities in your first 100 days as town manager? And how would you approach learning the organization and building relationships across the community?
So that's a challenging question, only because I've been here for 6 months in this role. While it is different because it's interim, and it's really, we jumped right into budget season and we had to make sure that, we were just keeping the ship afloat. I think the next 90 days we'll get into that, financial budgeting process where we look at 5 years, 10 years. And that really is my goal. I think my number one goal is to make sure that the employees feel as though that they are secure in their positions, that they are being heard, that any ideas they have, that we're listening to them. And I'm excited to work with the FMRB team to move forward with that 5-year forecast on both capital and financial operational needs.
Thank you.
Great. My turn.
Go ahead.
So how do you manage the influx of emails and calls from citizens and other boards and committee members wanting to be responsive and yet knowing you have a town to run?
Yeah. And that is a challenge. I may get 400 emails a day. And some I have to prioritize based on the goals that we have set forth. Some come in and oftentimes what I'll do is say, this is a public records request. I'll copy the town clerk and say, this is a public records request. It keeps me honest to say, I'll get back to you within the time frame, which is the 10-day time frame. And if it's something that I have at my fingertips and I can answer quickly, I certainly will. But if it includes a lot of research and something I just can't get my hands on, then I will go the public records request route just to make sure that it's documented and you will get an answer.
Great. Mr. Farag.
Great. Can you tell us about a time you used an innovative or creative approach to solve a complex problem in your organization? What was the challenge? What did you do differently? And what was the outcome?
So the innovative approach, I think we can go back to COVID when we talk about innovative approach. Trying to secure PPE during a time where there was nothing open. PPE was limited, resources were limited. We had to make sure that we were following all procurement guidelines at the same time, extremely challenging. We had to make sure that we were communicating with our surrounding towns because oftentimes they were able to procure things that we weren't, and likewise. So I think that was certainly challenging. I think what we implemented at the time were essential checklists with emergency management. And that helped us determine what was needed for our staff, our community, our schools. We were able to, sorry about that. We were able to fulfill many requests with the help of the emergency management department. And just working collaboratively, I think that was the best way to implement any challenges we had for that time.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Brady, did you have another question? No, I don't think so. Is that it?
Remember, I've interviewed twice.
Yep, okay.
I had both. Well, did you have any questions for us? While we're wondering if we have questions for you.
Yes, so I actually do have a question. We've been working together for some time now. And one of my questions would be, what do you want to see in a town manager? What do you want to see them accomplish in 90 days, 120 days? What are your goals? What does that look like for the select board?
Why is everyone?
Well, I'll throw an answer out. I'll throw an answer out if you want.
I might not be sitting in this chair in 90 days. I think. Go ahead, Mr. Brady.
Well, personal, I'd love to see an up and running or the start of an up and running public safety building that the town is on. So I hope they all hear at a town meeting. I hope town meeting is run beautifully and everybody gets a chance to be heard. And I hope that we can take the tone down in the next 90 days and maybe try to get some people pulled back in to work. And that could be on both ends, but take the tone down, the rhetoric, just some of the vitriol that's gone on. And I'm not throwing at anybody in particular, but on both sides, just to answer back that we're a nice little town. We really are. And, this has been a difficult time all around. And we've had a lot of changes. And again, I'd just like to see it back to like a Cohasset Village, solid community, instead of prodding and say, for instance, the job you did on the tennis court because something happened out of your control. To me, I think you did a fantastic job. You responded, open with the public, but people get in there at a point in time and that's what happens. And that's okay. That's their right. But I'd like to see people maybe reaching out to the town manager or the board and instead of feeling something's wrong. I'd like to see whoever comes on this board that, is that people see them as not the enemy and the town manager is not the enemy and not the wall. We got to take down the walls.
So maybe implement some office hours for select board and town manager.
Nice idea.
Mr. Farag.
Thanks. I previously said some of this before, but I think that the next town manager, the town has evolved with the Town Manager Act, and the town has evolved with the town managers to where it is now. I think it's time to take the town to the next step and bring the town into the 21st century in every respect. And so the goal would be for the town manager to help do that, help create the plan for that. Not just the technology, but it's not about working just harder. It's about working smarter, more efficiently, and to create those efficiencies that at the end of the day, the people can get the results that they're looking for and what they're paying for. And I think that's finally is the only way that a small town like Cohasset can survive. I think we have to be you can't control the ocean, but we can navigate it, and we have to be the little town that could. So that would be the general overview, and then the short term 90 days, 120 days after town meeting and election. For people who are at home, if they don't know, there's a reforming of the board, and then we have a meeting to set goals and go forward. And so from that process, I think that's how you schedule out the next 90, 120 year, and then as you said, with 5 and 10 year budget plans going forward.
Excellent. Thank you,
Mr. Plex.
For starters, I definitely won't be in the seat in 90 days, but happy to share my perspective regardless. I want to echo what Mr. Grady said, that we've got some energy in the town that is not necessarily pointed in great directions. It'd be great to see that mitigated a little bit, but what energy could be redirected for some positive, constructive conversations and some different perspectives could be good. I think we've seen some of that in the last several months. I hope it continues. But if I were setting goals, I don't know if 90 days is enough to do it, but making progress in that direction to take some of this energy that we see and put it to some good use.
Thank you.
I think if you were to be selected, I think one of the biggest challenges you might have is morphing from an interim to a permanent. And when you're an interim or filling in, for say someone's out on maternity and filling in their job, there's a subconscious mindset to that. Like, I'm going to do the best I can, but I don't know if it's going to get me where I want to go. And that's human nature and that's natural. So to answer your question, if you were to be selected in your first 90 to 100 days, and I'm not saying overtly you demonstrated any of that as an interim town manager, but it is a sea change. It's a little, there are all these cliches, a little different hop in your step, a little bit different tone in your voice, up or down, either way. And I think that's important, and it's important for staff to understand, because I think having an interim is challenging for staff as well. Is Ms. Leary going to be here? Is she not going to be here? Is someone new going to come in? So I think that's going to be a very important it's not a hurdle, but bridge for you to cross if you're selected as town manager. I think it's important to continue the dialogue and the response that you've been doing. And so I wouldn't see any change in that for your first 90 or 100 days.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. And we appreciate this has been a challenging process because you've been at the table when we've been talking about it, and it is unique. I went through it on the school committee with the assistant superintendent being at the table when we were going through a process. So I respect your professionalism throughout all of this.
Thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed working as the interim town manager, and I hope to be working as the town manager in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Okay.
Break.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5, 10 minutes.
Just 5, I think.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
I was kidding. I'm not.
Mr. Farag. Come back in. Kevin, we're on. Thank you. First off, I want to thank the 3 candidates for coming, for going through the process. You had said, you were on the timeline at 13 weeks, 14 weeks, whatever. We said a 12 to 16 week. Yep. That's a long time, I think, for an individual to kind of be in limbo from application to finals. So I'd like to thank everybody, the original 7 who you brought forth to the committee for applying, for showing interest in Cohasset, and then to the final 4, and then to the 3 that came tonight. I found it very interesting, and being in this town, you get used to the people that you see, and it's refreshing to get perspectives from others outside of Cohasset. So what we're going to do to my colleagues is we're going to go through each candidate in the order in which they were interviewed, and we're going to talk about the positive attributes of each, and we'll whittle it down. We'll just keep whittling it down until we get to where we want to be. And so, I don't know, I guess I'll be the scribe to keep track of what we discuss. So
the only context I would put it in.
Sure.
Remember some of the things that you all told us and what your department heads told us. Leadership, accountability, visible in the community, financial acumen. Those are all of the type of things that as we went through this with the screening committee, we saw those characteristics in the candidates that ultimately came forward for you, the 3, 4, but now 3.
Yep.
So keep that in your mind. That's what you're looking for,
Right.
the best match for all of those characteristics.
Okay.
And, I think you saw a lot of those skills in front of you tonight. But it's your decision to make who you think is the best, quote, as Buzz always says, fit for your community.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's start with Miss Praval. She was our first candidate, and we'll just go down, in order, and just give a couple of phrases. I mean, do we need to go one by one, or can David say 3 or 4 things?
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Farag, do you want to lead us off?
Sure. I'll lead up. I thought she was tremendously organized on the financial side, from her experiences that she had in Carver, and then also being the auditor in Brockton, coming into a situation that was from the Brockton situation, coming to a situation that was a mess.